Diddy's mother shocks courtroom testifies against him. It caught everyone off guard when 83-year-old Janice Combs, the mother of Sean Diddy Combs, was called to the stand. The federal courtroom in Manhattan fell silent, so sudden you could hear a pin drop. Cameras swung to capture the scene, an elderly woman, steady but solemn, stepping up to testify against the son she once shielded. Diddy, his demeanor calm only moments before, now shifted uneasily in his seat. His lawyers exchanged concerned looks. The prosecution straightened. Something profound had just happened. Mrs. Combs, the prosecutor's voice, broke the hush. "Thank you for appearing." Janice paused. She removed her glasses and carefully scanned the courtroom jurors' media gallery defense table. No trace of drama here, just gravity. "I'm here," she said, voice measured, "because the truth needs to be told, no matter how painful." The judge nodded, eyes grave. Janice took the oath. "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?" she affirmed. The gavel tapped once. Proceedings officially restarted and shifted forever. Rewind. Earlier that morning, the courtroom had been business as usual. Journalists hunched over notepads. Attorneys whispered strategy. Diddy, ever the showman even in legal woodwork, had greeted gallery waves with a hint of a grin. But buzz had been building, whispers of a twist and unanticipated testimony. No one expected her to be called his mother. And then she appeared. The defense tried to block her words. "Family member privilege applies," Diddy's lead counsel hissed, but the prosecution countered. "Her testimony relates to alleged wrongdoing. That privilege does not apply." The judge agreed. Janice would speak. She began not with accusations, but with history. "I raised Sean as a single mother. His father was murdered when he was a child. I worked multiple jobs so he'd have what I never did." Her tone, deliberate and soft, painted a portrait: pride, love, hope. She recalled his rise from intern to record exec, from charisma to empire. Then the shift. He became so used to hearing yes to everything she said, voice tightening. He started believing the rules didn't apply to him. She paused. The courtroom held its breath. Janice's gaze flicked to her son. He stared blankly at the table. She touched the heart of the matter. "I remember parties at his Miami home. Young women crying, phones confiscated, a guard went too far. I walked away that night unsettled. A hush settled deeper, eyes widened. A single press photographer clicked discreetly. She followed with detail that cut explosive outbursts. Silent staff tense dinners. Patterns compiled over years. I tried to ask him about it. He'd say I didn't understand. Everything was consensual, it was the industry. But it didn't feel that way." Then the turning point. Janice described confronting him in April post-arrest. "I said, 'Sean, I need the truth.' He told me, 'Mom, you don't build what I built by playing by everyone else's rules. Sometimes people get hurt, that's business.'" The courtroom gasped. Diddy slumped. His attorney leaned in, mouth moving. Journalists scrawled faster. The public gallery's subscribers to support grew silent. She produced a letter she'd written, "I love you unconditionally, but I cannot be silent any longer." According to the prosecution, Diddy answered, angry, pleading. "I didn't understand." She read it all, eyes steady. This wasn't theatrical, just a mother torn by love forced to testify. Then came the climax. "I believe the women who were hurt deserve someone to stand with them. I love my son enough to tell the truth, even to him." Her words cut through the veneer. Diddy's attorneys rose for cross-examination. But instead of tearing, they offered polite challenges. "Is this based on assumptions? How close were you to the events?" Yet Janice remained resolute, quiet, pride, unwavering love, tangled with pain. As she retreated from the stand, she walked past her son, eyes locked in that fragile moment, betrayal, sorrow, a child and mother, confronted by facts too heavy to ignore. Diddy's expression unmasks a man caught between empire and family. No applause, no cheers, only the soulmate rift exposed in public view. The judge called recess, and for the first time in this trial, the court believed nothing. Not fame, wealth, or blood can fully shield a man from the voice of his mother. Word spread like wildfire. By the time court resumed, clips of Janice Combs on the stand had already gone viral. News anchors interrupted programming. Hashtags multiplied by the minute. Truth from Mom, Diddy trial, Janice speaks. Inside the courthouse, the atmosphere was changed. The crowd had shifted from curious to reverent. What they had witnessed was not just testimony, it was history cracking open. The prosecution resumed quickly. Your Honor, we would like to enter into record Mrs. Combs's personal logs, Exhibit 42. Gasps followed. Janice had kept handwritten notes, detailed records of troubling behaviors, conversations, and her own emotional state. As the first pages were shown to the jury via screen, a hushed shock blanketed the room. Each line was careful, dated, deliberate. Oct. 14, 2016. Sean dismisses crying woman in hallway. Says she's dramatic. Appeared frightened. Jan. 22, 2018. Miami visit. House unusually quiet. Staff anxious. Caught glimpse of bruises on assistant's wrist. Sean claimed she fell. Mar 3, 2020. LA studio locked. Female voice inside crying. Refused to let me near. Guard unusually aggressive. The defense objected, this is hearsay. But the prosecution argued these were not presented as fact, but state of mind, contemporaneous concerns of a witness. The judge allowed it. Janice was recalled briefly. Why did you keep these logs? She answered. To stop myself from forgetting. To see if I was imagining it. I wasn't. Diddy avoided her gaze. The courtroom stirred when the prosecution presented audio. It wasn't Diddy admitting crimes, it was a 2023 phone call between mother and son. Janice, you scared me. That video scared me. Diddy. That was a moment, a bad one, but you don't know the whole thing. Janice. Tell me then. Show me I'm wrong. There was no answer from Diddy in that call, only silence. When the clip ended, even the judge appeared moved. He requested a short recess. During break, media flooded the courthouse steps. Commentators clashed. Some said Janice had been manipulated. Others called her the moral compass the world needed. Social media wasn't split, it was on fire. She raised him. She knew. If his own mother is saying this, what else don't we know? Diddy remained in the hallway, silent, surrounded by lawyers. He didn't touch his phone, didn't speak, just stared ahead. As court resumed, the prosecution introduced Dr. Margaret Chen, a family psychologist. Dr. Chen, what can you tell us about the dynamic between a mother and an accused son of this nature? Her reply was swift. It's nearly unheard of. Mothers typically support, even when privately doubtful. For one to testify publicly signifies extraordinary inner conflict, but also truth. She analyzed Janice's emotional patterns, speech cadence, and memory. This wasn't rehearsed. It was processed trauma. The defense attempted to poke holes. Isn't it possible Mrs. Combs was projecting, mistaking what she saw? Dr. Chen smiled gently. Yes, but the consistency over years, the specificity of memory, and corroborating emotional cues say otherwise. The judge allowed all of Dr. Chen's analysis to remain on record. Day 2 of testimony ended with the room in silence. Even reporters delayed their posts. Something heavier than headlines lingered. That night evening, news ran retrospectives on Diddy's career, from chart-topping albums to mogul status. But they cut sharply into the final minutes of court footage, his mother's voice trembling. Because the truth matters. Court reconvened after an overnight media storm. The session opened in a charged hush. Every press member primed, every juror solemn, every seat occupied by intent curiosity. Janice Combs had not only testified, she had intuitively shifted the trial's gravity. The prosecution rose confidently. Your Honor, we now call Mary Jacobs, former household assistant, to corroborate Mrs. Combs's observations. Mary entered calm yet uneasy. She swore the oath and sat hands folded. Her eyes darted toward Janice Strength, drawn from a newfound truth alliance. "When did you start working for Mr. Combs?" the prosecutor asked. 2015. "Did you ever observe suspicious behavior?" Mary inhaled. "Yes. Guests removed phones. One evening there was a woman crying in the pool house. Security rushed her out. She paused. Cameras zoomed. Mary's voice was hushed but clear. Mr. Combs cleaned up quickly. No cameras, it seemed orchestrated. Defense sprang up. Objection hearsay. The judge paused. The prosecution responded that Mary's statements reflect first-hand observations, not rumors directly related to alleged incidents. The judge nodded. They could proceed. Mary looked to Janice briefly, then continued. "I saw tension between him and staff. I heard yelling. I was dismissed soon after I confronted a guard," crowd murmured. Staff shifters watched her testimony freeze the moment. Janice clenched her hands. Her diary wasn't wrong. She was right. "Thank you," the prosecutor said softly. Mary stepped back, departing with determined posture. Next came forensic documents, private logs, encrypted chat transcripts, security gestures. Diddy's high-powered attorney tried to cast doubt, calling them breaching personal privacy. The judge overruled. Relevance to alleged wrongdoing takes precedence. Courtroom screens, flash diagrams showing restricted rooms in homes, phone sweep metrics. The defense squirmed under the cold light of data. Then came the blow surveillance footage from January 2024. It captured Diddy exiting a restricted studio late at night. No cameras, no bracelet allowed. The surveillance guard testified to observed hushed meetings. The timestamp synced with a moment noted in Janice's diary. It was a clinical dismantling of carefully crafted deniability. The evidence was no longer theoretical. It was recorded in pixels, time-stamped, undeniable. Diddy's lead lawyer rose. "This isn't an admission of guilt. He was on private property." "But he denied presence there earlier," the prosecutor countered. "Why was he lying?" Silence rippled through the courtroom. A reporter exhaled. The judge instructed that this contradiction could be pivotal for jurors. By noon, the trial felt transformed. No longer about tabloid sensations, it was rooted in legal weight and human consequences. Janice's role became even more poignant, her testimony. The corroboration, the surveillance, it revisited hidden allegations with gravity. Outside media spun threads into narratives. Mom as prosecutor, Janice Combs's stand. Private logs versus public image. Surveillance catches Sean in contradiction. In the hallway, Diddy remained silent, head bowed. His defense team whispered strategies like coaches before decisive plays, evaluating responses, planning rebuttals, distancing from the visuals. The prosecution rapped, "Your Honor, this court has heard family staff logs video. We aren't trying a mother's past, but a timeline of concealment. We respectfully request admission of these pieces as corroborative evidence under Rule 803(6). Letitia James's legal advisor, already monitoring federal trackers, texted, "This is unprecedented. She got the footage. This is war." The judge studied the summaries. Evidence will be admitted. Allow cross-examination. Defense counsel stepped forward. "Mrs. Combs, was your testimony influenced by external pressure?" "By the media storm." Janice, just back on the stand, met the scrutiny. "My concern was never publicity. It was truth. I wasn't pressured. I came here to speak what I have watched and recorded." Jurors nodded. One scribbled fiercely, another, head dipped in empathy. Closing the day, the judge called a recess. Energy in the room was intense. Janice quietly consoled Mary. They shared a nod, two witnesses who carried weightier truths than intent imagery. Outside networks teased the next day's flow. Day 3, preview lawyer, cross, emotional defense. Mary left with her head held high. Janice walked past her son briefly. Their eyes met, an ocean of distance, of betrayal, of recognition, and Diddy averted his gaze. That night, social media morphed into reflection. Not memes, not reactionary clips. Privacy advocacy groups praised whistleblowers. Legal forums dissected admissibility. Podcasters debated motive versus morality in high-stakes testimony. But the undercurrent remained: this trial, originally driven by allegations, had become a moral reckoning. And at its center stood a mother's voice, echoing louder than any stars. The following morning, the courtroom was electric. Security was tight. Spectators lined up before sunrise. Reporters elbowed for position, and every seat was filled long before the judge entered. Diddy arrived wearing a more subdued suit, his eyes bloodshot. He did not wave, did not smile. His team whispered strategy, but his mind appeared elsewhere adrift. Janice Combs had not returned today. Her absence was louder than a shout. The judge called order. Proceed. The prosecution began with digital forensics expert Ronald Chang. Mr. Chang, can you walk us through what was found in the recovered backups? Chang clicked through screenshots, encrypted logs, partial chats, meeting memos, his voice steady. Multiple deleted folders labeled private clients, internal only, and most concerning, do not share. Were these erased? Yes, but retrieved via recovery tools. One folder timestamped from 2019 to 2023 contained logs with female aliases, payment schedules, and coded notes. Some entries flagged handled and reset needed. Jurors stared. One woman held her breath. The judge leaned forward. Defense objected speculative, but the court allowed context. Chang pointed out timestamps matching Janice's logs. This confirms metadata, he said. Then came the second expert audio analyst, Dana Lopez. We reviewed 84 recordings, some ambient, others phone backups. The prosecutor asked, "Did you identify any admissions, Lopez?" While not direct, tone and language suggest coercion, specifically in File 7A. The clip played Diddy speaking softly but forcefully. "You knew what this was." "I don't need permission when we're in my house." Gasp. The gallery shook. Diddy sat frozen. The judge warned the gallery to remain silent, but the chill couldn't be undone. The prosecution rested for the day. The defense rose. Their tone changed, less confident, more precise. Lead attorney began. "We understand the gravity, but we urge caution against circumstantial judgment." They called 3 character witnesses, former associates, past collaborators, and old mentor. Each painted Diddy as tough but visionary, intense but fair, and a man who made mistakes but nothing criminal. But under cross-cracks showed. The prosecutor asked, "Were you present in the events alleged?" Each admitted no. The third witness, a former PR manager, said, "I saw his moods change. I worried about his pressure." The day ended with uncertainty. Diddy's gaze wandered again. That evening, the networks pivoted, not just Janice's words now, but tech, evidence, tone, analysis, data mapping. Commentators weren't debating guilt anymore. They were debating outcomes. On Reddit, subthreads formed, "R Justice Watch," "How many warning signs went ignored?" "R Industry Insider." Is this the end of Diddy's legacy? And Janice's name trended again. That night, an op-ed headline read, "The only truth, strong enough to shatter fame, was a mother's." As Day 4 prepared to dawn, even seasoned court watchers admitted they had never seen anything like this. Day 5 opened with rain lashing Manhattan's courthouse steps. It didn't stop the crowd. If anything, the tension in the air pulled people closer. Umbrellas snapped open like shields, protecting those braving the storm. Not just the weather, but a storm of cultural reckoning. Inside, the court was filled with an undercurrent of anticipation. New exhibits had been entered into the docket overnight, submitted at 11:42 p.m. by the prosecution. Sealed until court resumed. That added weight. Something new was coming. The judge entered with a clipped nod. "We'll proceed." The prosecution called an unexpected witness, a former assistant of Diddy's name, withheld from media until today. Her name was Rachel Ford. She walked slowly, carefully. Her voice was calm. I worked for Mr. Combs from 2016 to 2020. Executive aide. Scheduling travel confidential errands. She was sworn in. The prosecutor asked gently, "Why are you here today?" Rachel didn't blink. "Because what I saw was wrong, and I enabled it longer than I should have." She recounted instances of women leaving Diddy's private studio, shaking confused, of staff being told never to ask questions, of being tasked with purchasing gift bags, luxury cosmetics, expensive perfume, and occasionally Plan B pills, always in bulk. She showed emails sent from burner addresses, attached receipts. "Who paid for these?" the prosecutor asked. "His accounts, always marked as guest hospitality." "Did you ever voice concern?" "I did. Once, and I was warned. HR told me to understand the culture." The courtroom was utterly silent. Rachel paused. "I stayed quiet for too long, but after Ms. Combs testified, I knew I had to say something." The gallery erupted. The judge slammed his gavel. "Order." Next came the bombshell. The sealed exhibits were opened. Government Exhibit 54. A backup drive found in a former security aide's apartment during an unrelated IRS search. It contained video. Unedited, time-stamped, geotagged. Clips were queued for the court's private viewing. The jury, judge, and legal teams watched behind soundproof glass. Only transcripts were provided to the public. But the room's energy shifted after. Word leaked scenes of verbal threats. One woman recorded saying, "He told me if I told anyone he'd ruin my life." And I believed him. Prosecutors didn't need to dramatize. They just let the evidence speak. By afternoon, the defense was crumbling. Diddy's lawyers requested a 24-hour recess to reassess strategy. It was denied. So they pivoted, presented documents from charities Diddy had supported. Youth programs, scholarships, a 2020 donation to a domestic abuse shelter. But when the prosecution asked if these donations coincided with public allegations, the timeline matched too neatly. "Were these redemptive or reactive?" the prosecutor asked. The witness stumbled. I can't say." The question echoed like a drumbeat. Outside protests surged, some supporting survivors, others calling it a media trial. Inside Reddit threads, factions emerged. "Justice for Janice. She broke the cycle. She's the bravest one. Due process. Matters let courts decide, not clickbait. Diddy downfall. He built a kingdom, but he forgot it was made of glass." New York's skyline faded behind clouds as the sun dipped. Inside the courtroom, however, clarity was growing. Day 6 began with no celebrity buzz, no fanfare, just raw anticipation. Word on the street was clear: the jury was ready. Inside, the air was thick with a finality too vast to name. No cameras were allowed, but sketch artists readied their pencils with nervous energy. Judge Carter called the room to order. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" The foreperson, a man in his late 50s, with silver-rimmed glasses, stood slowly. "Yes, Your Honor." He handed a folder to the bailiff. It passed through trembling hands to the judge, who read silently, then nodded. "Will the defendant please rise?" Diddy stood shoulders square, but eyes hollow. His legal team flanked him. The entire courtroom leaned forward. The judge's voice carried, "On the charge of criminal coercion, guilty. On the charge of obstruction of justice, guilty. On the charge of witness tampering, guilty." Each word was a hammer, each syllable final. Gasps, a muffled cry. Janice Combs was not present, but her testimony echoed in every breath. Diddy blinked slowly. His jaw clenched, but he remained composed. The judge turned to the jury. "You are dismissed with the court's deepest gratitude." Cheers erupted outside the building as word spread. Inside, solemnity reigned. Then came sentencing. Prosecutors argued for the maximum. Mr. Combs used wealth and power as weapons. He orchestrated silence. He weaponized fear. Defense begged for leniency. "He has contributed to communities. He's a father, a philanthropist, but the judge was unmoved. No one is above the law. He sentenced Diddy to 18 years federal, with eligibility for parole after 10. The courtroom stood still. Reporters typed furiously. Court officers prepared for custody transfer. Diddy turned to his lawyers. He whispered something inaudible. Then, without resistance, he was led away. That evening, every major outlet broadcast the story. Diddy convicted on all counts. Power and fame. No shield, says judge. A mother's testimony changed everything. CNN invited legal experts. MSNBC replayed Janice's testimony. Fox debated systemic failure. Reddit exploded. R public freakouts. The moment verdict dropped pure silence. R pop culture justice. She warned us. Janice was right. R music industry inside. Fall of a mogul. Janice released a handwritten statement, I love my son, but I could no longer shield him from what he had become. Accountability matters. It was published in the New York Times. The courthouse emptied slowly. Staff filed reports. Prosecutors shook hands. Defense disappeared through a side door. But it was in the silence that followed, in the echoing footsteps and the crackling stillness of the now empty chamber, that the weight of justice was felt. Justice had not just spoken, it had roared. The next morning, the streets outside the courthouse were calm, but in homes, offices, and online, the storm raged. What had been a media spectacle transformed into cultural soul-searching. CNN ran a special segment titled Legacy on Trial. It opened with Janice's voice from the stand, then faded into silence as the camera panned over images of Diddy in cuffs. Across channels, there was less shouting, more reflection. Meanwhile, Janice Combs remained out of the spotlight. She returned home to find letters pouring in, some angry, others grateful. One written in blocky teenage script read, "My mom finally believed me because you spoke." Social movements emerged. Survivors Speak, a global forum for those silenced. Mothers for Truth, started by Janice's testimony, uniting parents willing to confront pain. Reclaim, the industry insiders, calling for accountability and reform. The trial had become more than a conviction, it was a mirror. At Howard University, where Diddy once gave a commencement speech, student activists gathered in front of the alumni hall. They demanded his name be removed from campus honors. Within days, petitions crossed 200,000 signatures. In Los Angeles, artists removed his songs from playlists. Streaming numbers dropped sharply. Endorsements evaporated. Companies released statements, zero tolerance. Diddy's empire began to crumble. His properties were quietly listed. Boards he once chaired accepted his resignation. Lawsuits multiplied. But amidst this reckoning, some asked, could redemption exist? At the federal facility in upstate New York, Diddy's intake process was swift. No privileges, no exceptions. He was assigned a number, a cell, a schedule. He remained largely quiet, according to a leaked guard memo. Speaks rarely, keeps to himself, reads a lot. The only visitor, Janice. Their first meeting post-verdict was brief. Behind the glass, she looked tired, but resolute. He picked up the phone. "Why'd you come?" he asked. She held his gaze. "To remind you that truth isn't your enemy." He said nothing, but he didn't hang up. Meanwhile, Congress held a hearing on entertainment industry ethics. Legislators quoted Janice's testimony. One senator said, "When a mother breaks the silence, a nation must listen." Proposals were drafted. Whistleblower protections, mandatory reporting, grant funding for survivors. Elsewhere, journalists reflected. "We chase drama," one wrote. But it was a mother's quiet resolve that cracked open history. By week's end, a museum in Atlanta opened an exhibit, Voices Unheard, Testimony, Trauma, and the Public Reckoning. At its center stood a recreated witness stand. Visitors left handwritten notes beside it. A 10-year-old's note read, "I believe my big sister now." The reckoning wasn't just a courtroom drama. It was a cultural shift. Not just the fall of a mogul, but the rise of collective courage.